Les Gold risked everything and nearly lost it all. The King of Pawn turned a gritty Detroit shop into a reality TV empire. But behind the scenes, things weren't as simple as they seemed. There were employee betrayals, financial struggles, and a scandal so explosive it made national headlines. When Hardcore Pawn went off the air, fans thought they'd seen the last of Les Gold. But the truth about what happened next is something no one expected. Hardcore Pawn was built on chaos, loud customers, wild negotiations, and family feuds that often turned into full-blown battles. But behind the cameras, American Jewelry and Loan was a real business, run by a real family. Les, along with his son Seth and daughter Ashley, turned it into one of the most famous pawn shops in America. They worked long hours, dealt with high-pressure decisions, and managed a constant flow of cash and merchandise. Unlike the polished drama of reality TV, the real-life stakes were higher, the risks were greater, and the consequences devastating. But not even they could predict that the real drama wouldn't come from customers. It would come from someone inside, a man they trusted, Joe, the head of security. Joe wasn't just an employee. He was the guy who guarded the door, watched the cameras, and made sure everything was safe. He had the keys, the codes, and the trust of the entire Gold family. To Les, Joe was more than staff. He was practically family. But behind the scenes, Joe was stealing from the very store he was supposed to protect. It didn't start with a major heist. At first, it was subtle. A piece of jewelry missing here, a discrepancy in the log there. But Les, ever the meticulous operator, started noticing a pattern. Items weren't being misplaced. They were disappearing. So he did what any savvy pawnbroker would do. He set a trap. A high-value diamond ring was left out, just barely covered. The next day, it was gone. Les reviewed the footage, and there it was. Joe, casually pocketing the ring like it was nothing. That footage wasn't a one-time fluke. When they dug deeper, the security system showed a pattern of theft, multiple incidents spanning weeks, even months. Les didn't explode in rage. He didn't confront Joe in front of staff. He called the police. He knew that handling this quietly would send a clearer message. Joe walked into work the next morning, acting like everything was normal. But waiting for him in the shadows were Detroit detectives. They approached him in the store, and when confronted, Joe didn't even bother denying it. He reached into his pockets and pulled out thousands of dollars worth of stolen jewelry. Necklaces, rings, bracelets, items that were supposed to be in the safe. In total, he had stolen over $77,000. The betrayal hit hard. Joe had been with them for years, had celebrated birthdays, holidays, staff milestones, and now he was gone in handcuffs. But the chaos didn't end there. Other employees began slipping. Trusted workers like Amy and Rich, who had been part of the day-to-day operations, started making errors that cost the business real money. Inventory tracking fell apart. Items were loaned without proper documentation. High-ticket merchandise vanished. Les couldn't believe what was happening. The shop that had survived decades of hardship was starting to fall apart from the inside. For a man who had built everything from scratch, starting as a teenager in his grandfather's pawn shop, it wasn't just about money. It was a violation of everything he believed in. He had always prided himself on running a tight ship, where loyalty and discipline came first. Watching that unravel was a personal blow. And then came the memories, the ones Les had buried deep. In 1971, long before reality TV, Les was working at Sam's Loans, the family's first shop, when an armed robbery erupted in gunfire. A police officer and another man were killed right in front of him. Les, still a teenager, watched it unfold, with a mix of fear and helplessness. That day changed everything. He learned that the pawn business isn't just about buying and selling. It's about surviving. It's about being ready when things go sideways. That trauma fueled his obsession, with security, trust, and watching everyone like a hawk. And when Joe stole from him decades later, that old fear came back. It wasn't just about theft. It was about betrayal, about being blindsided again. And that's something Les Gold swore would never happen under his watch. By the time Hardcore Pawn premiered in 2010, Les Gold was already a legend in Detroit's business community. American Jewelry and Loan wasn't just a successful pawn shop. It was a machine, moving more merchandise and giving out more loans than many small-town banks. Les built the business from the ground up with grit, discipline, and a no-nonsense attitude. He wasn't the kind of boss who let things slide. Every loan, every transaction, every customer interaction had to meet his standard. But when the cameras started rolling, everything changed. TV fame brought exposure, but it also brought tension. The fiery arguments between Seth and Ashley weren't manufactured for ratings. They were very real. Seth, with his eye on the future, wanted to innovate, introduce tech, streamline the process. Ashley, deeply rooted in tradition and eager to prove herself, pushed for more authority in decision-making. Les found himself constantly torn, trying to mediate between his two children while still keeping the business afloat and the show entertaining. When the show ended in 2015, most people assumed Les would quietly bow out. But that was never his style. While the cameras stopped rolling, the business never did. Seth transitioned into the digital space, building a strong online presence and keeping hardcore Pawn alive through clips, commentary, and nostalgic posts. The fan base never disappeared. It just shifted online. Les, though less visible, was always close by, watching, advising, stepping in when needed. He remained the backbone of the operation, even as the shop adapted to new realities. But what worried Les more than any shift in media was the change he saw in his customers. The people walking through the doors weren't looking to flip a quick item or pawn something temporarily. They were desperate. They were bringing in the very tools they used to earn a living: power drills, saws, mechanic kits, and most of them never came back to reclaim them. To Les, this was a red flag. It wasn't just about changing habits. It was about survival. He saw firsthand what economic struggle looked like. American jewelry and loan became more than a pawn shop. It became a reflection of America's growing inequality. Les wasn't just dealing with merchandise anymore. He was dealing with broken systems, broken families, and broken dreams. Even so, he never lost his sense of purpose. Les continued to invest in Detroit, supporting local charities like the Heat and Warmth Fund, THAW, helping families keep their utilities running during hard winters. He mentored young entrepreneurs, spoke at schools, and shared his philosophy in his best-selling book, For What It's Worth. He talked about hustle, integrity, and the importance of learning from failure. His message was simple: never give up, and never forget where you came from. So what really happened to Les Gold? He didn't vanish, didn't retire to a beach, didn't walk away from the business he built. He's still there, in Detroit, in the shop, still walking the floor and checking the cases. Still making deals with the same sharp eye he always had. Because for Les Gold, pawning was never just about profit. It was about people, real people with real problems, and helping them get through another day. It's not just what he does, it's who he is. And he's not done yet.